Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Wire to Run. And I have to say, I've been looking forward to this episode for quite a while, kind of chomping at the bit.
Okay.
Nervous laughter there, I hear. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I mean, really, mainly because I know where the story ends,
Mhm.
but I don't think most people know how we got there.
No, I don't think they do either.
And honestly, I don't remember if we ever sat down, just the two of us, and actually talked through all of it.
I don't think we have either.
Well, today's the day. Well, you did a thing,
I did do a thing.
a pretty permanent thing.
Very permanent.
You got your first tattoo.
I finally did it. Yes.
Maui would be very proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
And I feel the people who know you are probably thinking, "What? Wh Laura got a tattoo?"
Yes, my friends are pretty surprised. They were like, kinda, "Wait, what? Laura?
But,
Like, got a tattoo?"
it's been a pretty long time, coming.
It definitely wasn't some sort of, like, spur of the moment decision. And you know that I've been talking about it for some time, actually, since right before the Dopey challenge.
Yeah, I know originally you had a, completely different idea for it, right?
I did. My original plan was to get something that represented finishing Dopey, maybe like a Dopey challenge logo or medal. Another one was like the Mine Train gems, like have a gem on my ankle or something with 48.6 miles. So I had all those types of ideas.
Yeah, and every time you start planning it,
I had changed my mind.
every single time,
Yes.
not necessarily the best way to go about a tattoo.
I have ADHD, so it's, I novelty and everything kind of wears off. So, I change my mind a lot. I get bored of the idea, so makes sense.
And I'm still here.
Pretty on brand. Yes. You're more permanent. You're like the tattoo on my body. You're not going anywhere.
Woo! All right.
No, for me getting a tattoo had to be more of a personal and kind of deeper meaning.
Mhm.
Because, like, the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that I guess the particular races wasn't actually the biggest part of my story. So, training for the Dopey challenge changed me in ways I really never expected. Um, it really wasn't about the miles anymore. It had become something so much deeper. And I wanted whatever I put on my body forever to reflect that.
Which is exactly what we're gonna be talking about today.
Yes, because the tattoo tells a story, but the story actually starts way before I ever stood at the starting line of the 5K of the Dopey Challenge. So,
There's a lot more to that tattoo story, but we're just gonna let that sit for a minute. I'm
okay.
gonna put on my interviewer hat, and it's very official, and, it's not just me asking a lot of personal questions of my wife.
That sounds slightly concerning.
It should. But part of the deal is that no matter what I ask or what we discuss, you'd answer as openly, honestly, and as unfiltered as you can or as you feel comfortable with.
I did agree to that. And I think now that we've grown into the podcast and gotten to know so many of the people who come back and listen every episode, I feel more comfortable sharing this part because there's definitely a message behind the mess. And my hope is there's something in my story that helps someone else see their own story differently.
Exactly. And you do have quite a story. I know part of the hesitation has been that telling it means letting people into some very personal parts of your life, things that you've survived, things that you've fought through. Let's just jump into it. So, before the marathon, before Dopey, before Wire to Run, and long before that tattoo, when you look back at everything that you've been through, where does this story really begin for you?
Well, I feel like a cat who's lived 9 lives, kind of, or hopefully I haven't ran out of them. So, my story includes surviving severe preeclampsia and severe postpartum preeclampsia twice. It includes battling cancer 3 separate times. fighting through hurdle after hurdle to get our kids access to ADHD therapies and supports that they needed. And then it includes coming to terms with my own ADHD diagnosis later in life and kind of looking back at years of my life through an entirely different lens. There were so many times when I was just trying to make it through the next appointment, the next diagnosis, rejections to therapies, requests to therapies, and or the next difficult day, all the while working as a full time mom. So I guess for a long time, survival felt the goal. And I didn't realize yet that survival was only the beginning of my story. So,
I mean, it's such a journey, and I know myself, I absolutely wouldn't have handled it, the way you did. Um, I always love, like, when you go for a job interview, it's kinda like, who do you most respect?" You know? "Who who's your hero?" And I always say it's you. I always say it's my
oh,
wife,
thank you.
because of all the stuff that you've been through, all the stuff that you've overcome, and we're just scratching the surface. Um, it must have been so incredibly difficult to cope with life throwing so much at you.
Yeah, there were many times where I was just kind of trying to get through all of it, and that survival instinct kicks in and it's overwhelming.
Absolutely. Um, I know you were diagnosed with thyroid cancer as a teenager. Can you share about the diagnosis and how that impacted you at such a young age?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed at 17, but I was tested for it the year before. Um, Regular doctor's appointment, went in to sign this card that said that I could participate in like things like sports and theater and things. My doctor had felt like a small lump on my right side of my thyroid. I didn't know what a thyroid was at the time, actually. So I was like, okay. And he said, let's go get a biopsy. Just make sure that you're okay. Did a few biopsies and everything came back negative. So I thought I was in the clear. I was 16 years old. I was an opera singer, as I mentioned on previous episodes. Over the course of a year, kind of I couldn't hit the high notes. And my opera teacher was like, something's going on. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel like it's a little bit hard to hit the notes. So my voice teacher was like, you need to go to a ear, nose, and throat doctor to get biopsies again. And um, there's a certain doctor that Joseph Atkins, wonderful doctor, who I saw, and it was hard to get in to see him because he was a surgeon for many singers, well-known singers and opera singers and things like that. It was really hard to get in to see him, so I had to get specific connections to get to see him. Went in there, I think it was like November, December of my senior year of high school because I was I was 17, and they did the biopsy. I think I got a call like a week later or so, and they said, your thyroid definitely has to come out, and we need you to come into the office. And came in and sat down, and the doctor said, I just want to preface this that you're going to be okay, but you do need to know that you have cancer. And I could feel like all of the blood in my head just rush down to my feet. I just felt really faint. What are you going to do with that? You're 17 years old. You're going to major in opera in college next year. It's there's really no words. I just remember staring down at like the floor of the doctor's office and just kind of like, what is happening? Like you just kind of can't. You almost don't hear the word. You hear the words, but you feel like it's not happening to you. That kind of feeling. Gosh, we have not talked about this. This is weird talking about it because I haven't thought about this in a really long time. I know we talked about this on another podcast. No, didn't go into detail about like the feelings of like being that young and hearing the words cancer.
I mean,
Um, yeah,
it's tough for anyone. I mean,
yeah.
let alone someone that's a teenager thinking, "I've got my whole life ahead of."
hmm Yeah, it was kind of shocking because that's like kind of a like it's not even in your mind. Like it's the furthest thing from my mind because like, oh well, the biopsies came back fine last year. I probably just need to have like a little surgery and have this lump removed or whatever. And you're like, what? I am too young to have cancer because you're so naive. I just felt like it's not something that was ever on my radar. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna be fine. And I was in shock at first, and then I cried, of course, and the doctor, he said, "I just want to tell you that this type of cancer that you have, papillary carcinoma, is, it's very treatable with surgery and radiation." And I hate the words that he had used because I've heard other doctors use this because it's very frustrating looking back, saying, "Oh, well, if you had to get cancer in your lifetime, this is the one you'd wanna get because it's, like, the most treatable." So I felt relief in that, but, um,
It's still cancer.
it's cancer, and it's near your vocal cords, and this is gonna be your livelihood eventually that you're gonna be a singer, you're gonna be using your voice. I'm using my voice now on a
Yeah.
podcast, you know? Um,
There's no way to use the word cancer in a positive
no,
con
it's very weird, it's like
yeah.
oxymoron, like, it's just like, "Really? This is a good thing?" He's like, "Well, if you're in this situation, this is probably, the best cancer you could kind of possibly have with the best, like, outcome." And naively going into that, I went with that in mind, but it was still scary. The day after Christmas was my surgery, and I had a whole thyroidectomy, and, he said, "Well, you did great. It was a long surgery." And, he said, "Next step is to get you on thyroid medication, to replace your thyroid." I didn't even know what a thyroid did, to be honest. And I didn't, there's like the internet was kind of like still
Now
up
is there
and coming. So you can't really Google what, thyroid cancer was. It was like going to the library to take books out.
now is there still was there radiation involved as well,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. So, after I was on the Synthroid, I had to get my levels right. And that caused weight gain because your thyroid controls your weight, many other things, skin, hair, nails, blood pressure, heart rate, all kinds of things. Recovery was tough. I had to go through radiation around my birthday, and I had to be quarantined in the hospital because the way that they treat thyroid cancer is radioactive iodine, I-131, and you have to be quarantined because you're radioactive. And they walked me down this like long hall, and everything was covered in plastic, and it was terrifying. It was something like a sci-fi movie. And you're a young girl and you're like, "What is happening? This is so strange." My whole life just flipped upside down. All I had to worry about was getting good grades, auditioning for colleges, going to prom, graduation, and then getting ready for college. And I was like, everything was kind of in limbo. So after that radiation, they did a body scan and they wanted to make sure that, everything uptook or whatever, but they wanted to see if it had spread, if it had metastasized. That was really terrifying because as a teenager, you're like, "Oh my gosh, am I not going to be able to graduate or get a job and get married and have kids? And how's this affect fertility and all this stuff?" These are all the things that are in the back of your mind that you would never be thinking as a senior in high school.
no,
You're
of course
faced with
not.
these really scary realities. So they weren't sure if it had spread, and at the time, they said it's just contained to the thyroid, and like, "Okay, we got it all." It was an adjustment. Like, you have to go off your medication, your Synthroid at the time. Now they have other treatments where you don't have to go off of it, but when you're going off of it, you feel you feel it's like the flu. I mean, at least I did in the times that I had to have radiation. It was like a truck hits you. You're so tired. You don't feel well. You gain about 15 pounds. It's really awful. It's the worst, like, month or 2 that like, leading up to your radiation treatment. But yeah, I try to feel as normal as possible. I went to prom and went to senior week with my friends, got a job over the summer, and try to kind of go back to normal and go off to college. Surprisingly, my voice was better after having it out. I could hit the high notes again. I'm lyric soprano, and so I could hit the high notes, and it was refreshing that I didn't lose my voice. But it was really
Wow.
scary.
I can't even imagine. I mean, you just kind of proved your toughness right there, and so many people would have folded, but after that, you graduated from college, you got a great
Mhm.
job, you moved out on your own,
Yeah.
you're about to take on the world as a young adult. So what happened after you graduated?
Yeah. Throughout my college years, I had to get followed up, but every summer, between each year of college, I had to get radiation because every blood test or scan or whatever ultrasound was showing things that were suspicious. So like, that's strange. You need more radiation. So I was quarantined, taking out my medication again, quarantined in total. I think 3 rounds of radiation. I went 31 quarantined, which was awful. I dreaded it every time. And graduated from college, started my new job. I got an amazing job right out of college and moved out on my own and my own place. And I was living not far from New York City and going to New York City every weekend and playing, singing, writing songs and meeting friends that are in bands and stuff like that. And just really like living my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. All the negativity is behind me. And then I go for a scan, an ultrasound, and my endocrinologist goes, oh, there's some suspicious lymph nodes. We need to do some biopsies. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not happening. This can't be real. So I had the ultrasound biopsies done, um, and blood work was off, and determined that the cancer was back after all that radiation and surgery. It was back.
Wow. I, I mean, I'm getting emotional just asking you a follow up question. How did you get through that second time?
It was hard. You got to go to like a really, I want to say dark place, but you're like, is this ever gonna go away? Like, what are the chances of it coming back? And even the doctor was kinda like, usually radiation takes care of this and doesn't really come back in the lymph nodes." I'm like, "Is this aggressive? Like, do I have to worry? I'm 22 years old and I'm a college graduate with my whole life ahead of me." And I'm like, what do I do with that? How do I handle this?" Had surgery again, and he did the second surgery. He was very careful. He's like, "I gotta be honest with you. This is a very risky surgery because you are a vocalist, and I am a pro in this area, for singers, but multiple surgeries is really risky. There'd be a lot of scar tissue." And he said, I just want you to be prepared that your voice might not be the same." And that was scary. And he said, "We'll know within the first week. Sometimes you'll be raspy and stuff at first." And I came out of the second surgery. I don't remember a lot from the second time. The first time was very, very vivid. Second time, I just remember waking up and speaking, "Oh, can I still sing?" It was like the first thing that I said out of my mouth. "Can I still sing?" I said in recovery as they were wheeling me into my room. And they're like, "We believe your voice is fine." And I could hear myself, my voice, and I still had my normal speaking voice. I was like, "Oh, thank God. If I sound like this, I probably can sing." But it was like those first few days, I was kind of like trying to do a couple of scales, and he told me not to sing. I was like, I just want to make sure I have my voice. You hone your craft and you work so hard over so many years learning Italian opera and German opera, and you're learning some of the language, and I couldn't read music. I could hear an aria and sing it back to you by ear.
So even back then,
A
rest was still a
what?
so even back then, rest was still a
Rest? Yeah, no, I don't know the word rest. It's not in my vocabulary. But went home, stayed with my family for a little bit, and then went back to my apartment. The aftermath was really scary for me the second time, and living alone. And, I lived about an hour and a half away from where I grew up and everything. So I didn't have any family in the area. So my best friends rallied and came and stayed with me. And they were a good hour and a half, 2 hours away. And my best friend Janine had stayed with me, I think, for a week or two. And she had a very long commute to work every single day and made that commute to stay with me, to like just help me out around my apartment, make sure I was recovering, entertaining me because she's hilarious. And anybody who meets my best friend, Janine, you'll know. But she kept me very lighthearted and my mind off things, and literally took care of me like a little mother hen for, I think she was with me for 2 weeks. So I call her like my little Saint Janine. She really took care of me, amazingly. And then my friends came to visit on the weekends, and I had like a revolving door of people just constantly checking on me and just there for me. Like I had such a great support system. This time I'm an adult and I live on my own. I have new friends and I have old friends that I'm, very close with. And I just had such an incredible community of people like rallying around me. So, yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's gotta be scary,
Yeah.
You think you're done,
Mhm.
you've already been told, "Hey, this is," again, horrible words to say, "best cancer to have. If you're
Mhm.
gonna get cancer, this is
Oh,
the
that
best
made me
one,"
mad the second time
you know,
around. I'm like, What did you say about this being the best cancer you can have if you had to get cancer?" And
and
he's like, "This is a little bit different."
and not only to get it again, but to get it while you're living by yourself,
Mhm.
away from the home that you grew up at,
Mhm.
and away from your friends,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I again, this is why you're my hero, and we're just
Thank
getting
you.
and honestly, we're just getting started, which is
Oh,
what's crazy.
yeah. It definitely makes you tougher. I think it made me grow up faster than I think the average teenager
Yeah.
would and young adult would. And, yeah, it was definitely a wake-up call and kinda like, "Oh, life is really short." And at the time, you're like, "Well, this is really weird. Why is it back? Is it spreading? Is it like do I need to be really, really worried about this?" And they really couldn't answer because the doctors were, like, kinda dumbfounded, like, "Well, you've had 3 rounds of radiation. This should have taken care of it for this type of cancer."
So, fast forward a couple of years
Mhm.
or 3 years or how many ever many years it was,
Mhm.
she met me.
That was I met you 2 years later, I think. Yeah.
And I'm gonna say that's a positive thing.
Yes. Yes, that was one of the good things.
But, we met, we got married, and, something miraculous happened.
Yeah.
You got pregnant with our first child, even though
Very early in our
yeah,
marriage.
even though with your past 2 cancer battles,
Mhm.
the doctors were saying that it could have been very difficult for you to get
Yeah.
pregnant, so
With all the radiation, yep. They decided, "Oh, you might as well start trying now because it could take you years to get pregnant because we don't know." Back then, they didn't know if the radiation
yeah.
did anything and got pregnant the first
Yep.
month.
I got pregnant,
It's
pretty
crazy.
pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was not anticipating that. They told me to start preparing for, like, fertility medications and stuff, so, like, well, it's gonna take a while. I better not get my hopes up, and then
Yeah, and it seemed like everything was going really well,
mhm,
but then the, 3rd trimester hit, and,
mhm.
things went a different way.
Yes, yes. I had, our oldest at a community hospital where we lived. We moved away from the New York City area, more to be a little bit closer to family and friends, and, I was having severe swelling,
Yeah,
like, horrible pitting edema, they call it, and I didn't know what it was at the time, but, like, I would put my socks on, and it would leave a huge indentation, and I started rapidly gaining weight, and my hands were swollen. I couldn't wear my rings. I couldn't wear shoes. I had to wear isotoner slippers, and my OB/GYN was like, "It's nothing. It's just normal swelling for pregnancy." And my blood pressures were high, and I was like, I just thought it was weird that this is concerning. And a colleague had mentioned to me, I had preeclampsia with my child. I couldn't even walk to the mailbox because it would be dangerous. I
yeah,
could have a stroke. And I was like, "You think that's what it is?" And she said, "I don't know. You talk to your doctor." I was like, "He's not worried." And so should I guess then it shouldn't be worried. She's like, "No, you need to worry about this. Maybe find a different doctor because it sounds like he's not taking you seriously." I was only 35 weeks pregnant. They check your urine for protein and everything, and it was, on the high side. I don't recall them checking that, like, earlier on in the pregnancy, and I'm like, "Why am I doing this?" They're like, "Oh, you just have to check in this, like, stage of the pregnancy." My blood pressure was through the roof, like, stroke level. They're like, "You are going across the street to the hospital now. Like, you will be admitted and probably stay there on bed rest until, you and your husband have this baby," which he was due sometime in December.
I remember you, I think left a voicemail,
Yeah.
because I was at work,
Do you
and
remember what it said?
I don't remember exactly what it said, but I know the first one was more like, you know, "They're admitting me, don't worry, don't leave work yet,
Yeah.
they're just, taking
Mhm.
precautions." So,
Yeah.
okay, cool. No worries.
Yeah. All of a sudden, this, like, team of doctors came rushing in, and they're like, "We are worried that you are going to have a stroke." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah,
I'm like, "More medical crap, like, happening. Like, can I get a break, please?" They're like, "Call your husband. You are delivering this baby today." I'm like, "I'm 35 weeks." And they're like, "Doesn't matter. You're having this baby today."
and I remember that call too.
Oof. Yeah.
I mean, there's certain times of your life where
Yeah.
you'll never forget
Mhm.
where you were, what you were
Yep.
doing, and I can recall that moment
Mhm.
to a T.
Yeah. Yeah, and you made it there. My best friend made it there. My parents made it there, and I knew I wanted my best friend in the room with me when I delivered. That was Ginny, and I wanted to have her there. I needed her. Like, she's a very calming, funny person, eases your mind anytime I'm stressed or worried. Even to this day, I'll call her, and she's very, very relaxing, and she's hilarious, and she's always, thinking of the right side. So I was like, I gotta have her in the room with me. So she showed up, you showed up, and then they induced me, and they're like, oh well, baby's here. He was like 4 pounds 9 ounces. He looked like a little rotisserie chicken.
It's like
He was so cute.
you'll be fine.
And fell in love with him. He was so sweet. They're like, okay, you're out of the woods. You don't have preeclampsia anymore. You'll be fine. Um, Put me on like low dose blood pressure medication because I still had high blood pressures, still had a lot of swelling. I got home and I was like, I don't feel right. Like I feel like I still have like headache, really blinding headaches. I forgot to mention that I was having headaches all the way up to like a two, week or two before they induced me. But I was having worse headaches after I
Yeah.
got home. And like I literally couldn't sleep. The pain was so bad. They said, take your blood pressure, start taking your blood pressure. The doctor's like, it's still pretty elevated for like my postpartum visit. And they sent me home. And I was like, okay. I remember that one night, I think it was my blood pressure was like 180 over 120 or something like that. And I called the doctor, like, you need to get back here right now. Call an ambulance or have somebody take you. So we went to the hospital. They admitted me, and they had to bring him in there because I needed my baby was going to be a part for my baby. They're like, this is severe postpartum preeclampsia. Like, we haven't seen anything like this. I was like, why am I the one to get the weird stuff?
And I think back then too, they didn't even really
They didn't know about
yeah,
postpartum preeclampsia.
they didn't even really
They didn't
believe
believe
it
it.
that it even existed.
You came and you had to stay with me
Yeah,
to take care of him because they put you on magnesium sulfate while you're in labor when you have preeclampsia to prevent you from having a stroke or seizures because it could turn into eclampsia, which can be fatal. And we know people who have passed away from it, new moms, unfortunately. So they were trying to avoid that and put me on magnesium sulfate, but there's still no guarantee. Like with that severe and waiting that long, and them telling me, oh, it's just stay home. I had that feeling, that sense of like doom feeling. It's one of the symptoms of preeclampsia or postpartum preeclampsia is that feeling of doom. It's really strange. And they put me on high doses of blood pressure medicines, and I was in there for about 3 or 4 days.
mhm, yeah,
And I remember at one point, the OB that delivered him came in and he like puts his hand on my foot and he's like, please don't die on me. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? And he was like, I don't know if he was joking or if he was serious, but he looked like he saw a
yeah,
ghost. And he's like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, I've never had a patient with postpartum preeclampsia. And I was like, oh my gosh, you told me that this is over after delivery. Delivery is a cure. Clearly, it's not.
yeah.
So I always give PSAs to people not to scare them. But if you are planning to get pregnant, are pregnant, um, always keep in mind that you're not 100% out of the woods until I think 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks after delivery. I got very involved in the Preeclampsia Foundation after that. So definitely check out the Preeclampsia Foundation. I will put a link in the show notes in case you want more information about it.
And to circle back,
Mhm.
is it THICA?
THICA, I think .org is the thyroid cancer organization that I actually joined to learn more about that as well.
And what's
Yeah.
and kinda going back to the preeclampsia,
Uh-huh.
the issue is, like, no doctor ever discussed it with you,
Like,
nobody ever mentioned it?
not through my entire pregnancy until they told me I had it.
Yeah,
I didn't have that conversation with the doctor, like what to watch out for, nothing. And I was angry, really, really angry that none of the staff told me about it and that I was very close to dying from it. Like he was really, he literally looked like turned like white as a ghost when he was talking to me. Like, oh my gosh, like I have to be there for my kid, And it was a real struggle. Like doctors and nurses kept coming in and going, we can't bring her blood pressure down. We can't. We're really getting worried, and they're letting me know this.
yeah.
I'm like, am I like at more at risk than when I had thyroid cancer? I was trying to like figure it out, like on the on the spectrum of risk compared to what I've been through. And I thought, okay, like I'm a pro. I've dealt with cancer twice. No, this was next level.
And part of it's also kinda like,
Yeah,
maybe have this conversation outside the
yeah,
room.
yeah,
The conversation's not gonna help me
yeah.
relax.
I was able to go home a few days later, get off of the blood pressure medicine, but uh, normally it resolves within 6 to 8 weeks. But I had to be monitored very closely at home, and they said go to the hospital if it continues to go up. So it was very touch and go. I couldn't really enjoy my maternity leave because I was only home for 9 weeks, and 8 of those weeks I had to monitor my blood pressure and be
Yeah.
worried about my headaches and all that stuff. It was a very stressful time.
Sometimes I just wish doctors would just kinda watch what they say
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's it
They downplay a lot,
yeah,
I think, and they don't give the knowledge and expertise to the patient. Like thyroid cancer, it's the most curable cancer. It's the best kind you want to get. No, that's not my case. And oh, postpartum preeclampsia is not a thing. No, that's not true either. So you have to advocate for yourself as a
yeah,
patient. You know your body better than anybody else, and do not stop until you are heard. Bottom line.
and I will say that because of our experience with our first child, many years down the road, when we had our second child,
Mhm.
you're much more prepared.
Yes. Okay, well, this is scary. Maybe we shouldn't, expand our family, but we really wanted another little one. And we waited a good like 10 years, 11 years, I shouldn't say waited, but like I wanted to get healthy. We had a big move to Florida. We
And
get
it's
acclimated in our jobs.
and it's scary
Yeah.
because if you know that again, if
Hmm.
you've had a bad
Hmm.
experience, you're not the first in line to try to
No,
get that experience again.
no, no.
So
And it's never leaves you. That scariness never
yeah.
leaves the back of your mind. So, but I was much more educated
Mhm.
going on the Preeclampsia Foundation page. I took better care of myself the second time around. I had lost about 70 pounds. Coach Tom, as he was on the show before, was very instrumental in that. And my coaches at OTF to lose weight and get healthy and strong. And was at the healthiest and fittest I'd ever been because they said that that'll reduce your chances
Mhm.
of getting preeclampsia. And we ended up getting pregnant with our daughter. And the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And we locked down literally the day after I found out I was having a girl. This is crazy. I'm going to have to deliver in a pandemic. And everything was up in the air and
Mhm.
COVID. Nobody knew anything about it because it was very early on in the pandemic. And protocols were changing every day at
Yeah.
hospitals where, your husband could be there, but he couldn't be in the delivery room. To your husband couldn't come in the hospital at all. He had to sit in the car to like, I'm gonna have to deliver by myself. What if I need a C-section? Nope. And then your husband cannot see you if you leave the hospital. You're stuck at the hospital. And I'm like, what? So the rules changed literally on a daily basis. I was calling my the nurse that was in charge of my case, and she was giving me an update every day, and that was terrifying. So I didn't have any swelling or anything like that. So I was like, oh, I'm in the clear, and I hit like 32 weeks. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, I started getting elevated blood pressures. And I thought, well, this is just stress from the worry about COVID. Like,
Absolutely.
we weren't going anywhere. We were ordering groceries online and we was picking them up. They had you work from home. I was full time work from home for my job. So,
And I will say you started the whole pregnancy
mhm.
with, like, a high risk,
Yeah. Yep.
OBGYN, so you were taking all those
Yeah.
steps to make sure that you were being monitored.
Yes, because I was considered advanced maternal age, so you're at risk already. But then you have to like throw into the mix of having preeclampsia in the past. I was getting scans like every 2 weeks and blood pressure checks at home, blood pressure checks at the doctors, and went to the ER a couple times
Mhm.
because I was actually starting to go into like early labor at 32 weeks. And so I was like, am I at risk for preeclampsia again? And she's like, well, your blood pressure's going up, but I don't see any protein in your urine, so you're good. Go home. And all of a sudden, horrible headaches, like worse than I had
Yeah.
with our son, to the point where I was sick as a dog and I couldn't see. It was so bad. I was having visual effects in my vision. I remember you took me to the hospital that day. It was like 200 over 120, my blood pressure. That was higher than it was. And I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was trying to keep my blood pressure low. I'm like praying in the car, like, please, like, I want to survive this because I don't want to leave our son behind. He's, almost a teenager and my little girl needs her mom. And I was just scared, like, what could happen to her because she was so premature. She was 33 weeks. And they did determine that I did have preeclampsia again and induced me and put me on the magnesium sulfate. But it was a wild ride because everybody was masking up. I was not allowed to not wear a mask.
Yeah.
And that was hard to breathe. And when they give you magnesium sulfate, they put the air conditioning down to like 60 in the room because you feel like your veins are on fire. It's not painful, I don't want to say, but like you just feel like you're having massive hot flashes, and it feels like the Sahara Desert in your body and in the room. So they know, like, put it all the way down. Then you have to wear a mask and you're dripping sweat because, of the medications, but you don't have a stroke. I just remember she was, like, ready to see the world. Epidural didn't fully take, so I definitely knew she was arriving, telling them to suit up because they were putting all kinds of extra medical, what's it called? I
What is it?
forget.
PPE?
We all knew that back in 2020 and
Personal
2021.
protection
Yes.
equipment.
Yeah. They were
What
suiting up, like, they looked like they were, going to the moon. They were astronauts. And they're like, "Wait, don't deliver." And I'm like, "I can't stop my kid from coming, sorry."
and I
And they're,
remember,
like,
like,
freaking out because
yeah,
they're trying to get all hands on deck to get into the room, so,
because I remember, like, the
yeah.
the doctor, whoever came in and checked and was like, "Oh, crap."
Yeah, and my kid pretty much delivered herself. But so she arrived and they weighed her and she was 3 pounds, 14
Yeah,
ounces.
314, yeah.
She was super tiny. I remember well, I told you, "Go with her to the NICU," because I knew they were taking her to the NICU, and there was, like, all these doctors around her. So he went up there, and I think you said there were people coming in and out,
I
and
was completely lost.
yeah.
I
I do
wait,
wanna
wait, wait,
apologize if
wait,
this
wait,
is triggering for
which
people who
which
are NICU parents.
I'm okay because they were taking great care of her. I was just,
Yeah.
first time having a kid go to the
Yeah.
NICU.
Yeah.
I was so confused and lost.
And I was just like relief. I feel like, okay, I literally treated it like a race. I was like, okay, I'm over the finish line. I'm still here. I'm still alive. I didn't know if I was going to survive this. And I was nowhere near over the finish
No,
line. I was at mile 15 of a marathon at that point, if you could kind of picture that in that journey. I was in the hospital for 9 days after I delivered because they could not control my blood pressure. And they would come in the middle of the night. It seemed like it was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. My blood pressure was so high that they had to give me like intravenous, they
mhm,
called it rescue medication. You were only allowed to stay for the birth
yeah,
and then see her in the NICU, and then you had to leave and you weren't allowed to return at all
no,
until you had to pick me up from the hospital because of COVID protocols. Nurses were not allowed to come in that often to check on me, just to take my blood pressure and give me more blood pressure medicine. I was not allowed to see my daughter because I was hooked up to magnesium sulfate for a few days so I wouldn't have a stroke. And I was not allowed to go up to see her in the NICU. I was allowed to walk because of the blood pressure. I had to have a nurse accompany me in a wheelchair to take me up to see her. But unfortunately, because they were so spread thin, because so many nurses were pulled into different parts of the hospital,
yeah,
doctors were out, nurses were out with COVID, they were like a skeleton crew. So this one wonderful nurse agreed to take me up. I hadn't seen my daughter all day and took me up to the NICU to hold her for a minute to talk to her. It was literally for maybe 5 minutes I got to see her. And I literally cried my eyes out because I was basically separated from her.
yeah,
And we had to do COVID tests every day. And they said that if you got COVID, you'd be separated from your baby for like 2 weeks. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was terrifying. No wonder my blood pressure was high, but it was
yeah,
preeclampsia. But I did have postpartum preeclampsia. And the OB-GYNs, all of them would come in and have meetings with me and like, okay, your blood pressure is not going down. This is not normal. So I'm an anomaly again. Like the cancer anomaly. Now,
yeah.
first time anomaly, never had a patient with postpartum preeclampsia when I had our son. And now I'm an anomaly again. Like, this is weird. Like, what the heck? And you go to that really dark place where you have to dig deep and muster all the courage and all the want to get through it. It was so hard to be apart from her, and she had a feeding tube, and she was hooked up to all these monitors, and to this day, if I see something on TV where monitors are going off in a NICU, it triggers me.
I think I've gotta make a correction.
Mm,
You said you're at, like, mile 15 of a marathon?
mhm.
No. You were more at, like, mile 13. You had just crossed, like, the halfway point
Yeah,
of a marathon, and you had no hydration, you had
yeah,
no fuel,
yeah,
but you still had to dig deep
yeah.
and finish. I mean, I couldn't have done it. I honestly don't know how you did it. Uh, all I know is, again, this is why you're my hero.
Oh,
You are, like, the strongest person I know. You've been through so much, and you've overcome so much that there's nothing you can't do,
You
pretty
don't really
much.
have a choice in that type of situation. You just have to fight for your health and your life because what's the alternative?
Yeah,
And I don't even wanna think about it, but it's like I had to be strong for my daughter. She needed me, my son at home, and it was hard for him not having his mom around and not having his sister home, and that was really hard. You had to go right back to
yeah,
work. You couldn't take paternity leave right out of the gate. It was really difficult, and you weren't able to see me. You weren't able to see her in the NICU. Was eventually allowed to go visit her during the day, and I just did not wanna leave.
mm,
And then doctors kept coming in every day. I'm like, "Am I getting released?" Like, I'm thinking if I get released, I could spend more time up there with her because I always have to limit my time because I've gotta come back down every 2 hours to have my blood pressure taken, and if it's elevated, they won't let me go back up.
yeah,
And that was the hardest part that I was like, my blood pressure is lower while in the NICU because I had you drop off a
yeah,
blood pressure cuff to me. I was taking my blood pressure in the room when I was apart from her, and it was high.
oh, yeah,
In the NICU, it was low. I'm like, "Why can't I just stay with her and you guys take my blood pressure up here?" Like, "We don't have the capacity to come up and take your blood pressure. You have to come down." But being apart from her affects me,
yeah,
and it's elevating it. So, they had to actually bring in a cardiologist to figure out the cocktail of blood pressure medication combination to send me home to
yeah.
finally get it under control, and thankfully they did.
Yeah, I'll say the medical staff there
Yeah,
was amazing. I just remember one person saying, "Look, we're not gonna discharge you until we know
yeah.
that you're
They
good."
yeah, because I told them, like, they discharged me 2 or 3 days after I had our son, and they were like, "You're fine, you're fine." And I literally advocated so hard for myself the second time that I was like, "I don't feel right, I don't feel right." They were extra overcautious. They had teams of doctors in there to figure out what the heck was going on, and then the cardiologist came in, and he was wonderful and figured out what I needed, and I was discharged on Mother's Day. Yeah, got to spend a couple hours with her, and then I was like, I was praying to get discharged on Mother's Day so I could see my son because I missed him, and, I was just want to see both my babies on Mother's Day. So, was released, going home, that was the hardest thing, leaving the hospital, leaving her behind,
Yeah,
knowing that this is the farthest I've been from my baby. Like, the distance kinda grew so big between her and I as the miles went on, and it was torture.
yeah.
Although I was happy to be home to see our son.
And I
Yeah.
gotta say, thank God for some of those NICU nurses,
Oh gosh, that
because
weren't
we would call at midnight, and there was at least one.
they would always have a story
Yeah.
about my daughter getting something. She pulled out her she's a wild woman. They called her wild woman in the NICU. Like, she's the wildest NICU baby in here. She's one of the smallest, and she's always pulling out her IVs, and she was swinging it around like the nurse was explaining. She was swinging it around like she was at a party. And that made me laugh and everything. But she's a tough cookie. They're like, she's going to be discharged in no time. So she was in the NICU for 3 weeks. Every day I had to leave was the hardest moments of being a mom, and walking out of that room and seeing her, like, her head like turn towards the door as I was leaving, and seeing her and she could see me walk away. But one of the greatest things that happened in the NICU, the nurse was giving her a bottle, but she was faced away from the door. And I walked in and started talking to the nurse, and she heard my voice. She was crying, and then she heard my voice, and she stopped, and she started turning her head in the direction I was, and the nurse says, "See, she knows your voice. She knows you're her mom. So even though you feel terrible that you're leaving every day, she knows your voice." And that was the greatest gift. I cried like a baby because it was like, "Okay, my daughter knows me." And the guilt's a little bit less of going home every day because they didn't with COVID, they didn't want parents to stay overnight. They also wanted postpartum preeclampsia moms to go home and get rest to get
Yeah,
better. Yeah, that was a really hard time. And then coming
yeah,
home with her was like the greatest feeling. And then locking down for like months where we didn't go anywhere. She is such a preemie. We just pray every day that she'd be coming
yeah.
home and everything. So she finally did. And getting her home, she was the best sleeper,
Yes.
and she was so easy. She still is,
Yeah,
really good sleeper and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was really hard in that journey. Yep.
yeah, but, I'm so proud of you because you advocated for yourself. At the time that you were fighting for yourself,
Mhm.
you were still strong for me, for both our children.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd be on the
It's
phone for hours with our son because we needed each other.
but then
Yeah.
again, there was another curveball.
Both our kids are diagnosed with ADHD. Having autism and ADHD was really hard to get them the services they need, to get the evaluations. The hardest part is when your child is suffering and is unable to access the resources they need to develop and grow. So that was the hardest thing I think I've ever gone through personally as a mom, just fighting for my kids' access to supports and services. It's an uphill battle getting the right early interventions in place to support your kids' needs. That was the biggest of the battles that I encountered because you have to fight with all of yourself to advocate for your kid, more so than your health when you're a patient. It is like these kids need therapies and speech and whatever it is. You're going to IEP meeting after IEP meeting, make sure that they have things that they need in place for school academically to have proper education and things like that. So that is a tireless battle that us parents of neurodivergent kids have to fight every single day. It doesn't go away with like, okay, preeclampsia is like resolved, cancer, and you're in remission. You will be fighting for your children. They have ADHD, and how do I be the mom that they need me to be? So I will fight for them till I take my last breath. Both kids, and they're so incredibly wonderful and bright, both of them, and have such bright futures ahead of them.
You do, and I see the again, I'm
You
trying to
sound like
find
a broken record,
yeah,
probably.
I'm trying to find the right words to say, and
Yeah.
it's so tough, but you fought with everything that you are for our kids, I can't even, like, tell you how much I appreciate everything you've done for our kids, and
Mm.
I've seen the battles that you haven't even talked about, um, um, I I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I know that's still not the end
Mhm.
of the challenges that you faced.
Battle after battle, you sort of wonder, can I handle this? It's my hands are tied. I don't know how to change the situation we're in. You just keep getting knocked down with every wave, one after another. All of these things that I mentioned in the beginning and getting the rejection of like, oh, you're on another wait list with another center, speech or whatever. So heartbreaking that you have no control over the situation. I want the circumstance to change to make it easier for my kids, to make it easier for my health. And Stephanie and I have talked about on the previous episode, I think maybe episode 5, her episode. We live in the in between, cancer survivors. We live in between every appointment, every 6-month follow up. And you kind of forget you have cancer. Not, you don't really forget, but it's not at the forefront of your mind because you move on with your, try to go on, live like a normal life. And then that time of the year comes around to get my blood work and my scans, and you just hold your breath at this point because it's been years of just hoping that you're still in remission. And I'm talking 22 years
Yeah.
at this point since my last reoccurrence. So you kind of think, oh, I'm good. I'm in the safe zone. Cancer's not gonna come after me a third time.
Be careful what you say, um,
Yeah.
because what happened in 2023?
Mm. Another curveball. I got diagnosed with cancer again, the third time.
Yeah.
And that I think that was the hardest part because the first 2 times I had cancer, I was single and living on my own and really like I was a kid. Um, and now I'm a mom and a wife, and these people really need me. And so when I had the ultrasound and they saw an unusual lymph node and my levels creeping up, they're like, okay, it's time to do a biopsy. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I can't go through this again. I don't think I'm strong enough. I don't have it in me to fight it for anything else. I'm fighting so hard for my kids and their services and the things that they need. And I just battled preeclampsia a few years before. I don't think I have enough fight in me to deal with this right now. And um, it was so hard. Gosh, I get emotional. I'm sorry if this is triggering for anybody because it's very real. But I knew I had to do what I had to do, and it came back positive. One lymph node they biopsied out of 7, one came back cancer. Like, talk about a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And so, I got the news, from a head and neck surgeon, that I was hoping would do the surgery locally. At first, he's like, "I'm not touching this.
Yeah.
This is you have had 2 surgeries before. There's so much scar tissue. You're still a singer. This is the riskiest surgery I've ever done on a patient if I do it." And he basically said he didn't trust himself. So he referred me out to,
So
Moffitt Cancer
so
Center.
thank you
Yeah.
for being honest.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And, like, he's like, "Well, maybe." I'm like, "No, no, you already said you don't wanna do it."
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I will tell you that phone call, I was just so angry.
Yeah.
I was just so angry that things were the way they were. So I'm gonna tell my son. He was always anxious about it coming back. It was always in the back of his mind. And my little girl was only a couple years old, and she didn't understand any of it. And I would have to be away from her and have surgery, wouldn't be able to lift her for 2 weeks. And I was just almost enraged inside. I didn't let you see it. I just cried. But I was like a hurricane brewing inside of frustration and all of the feelings that you could possibly imagine. And I remember going for a walk and calling my best friend here, Marisa, and crying on the phone and just like yelling, like, "Why? Why? This is happening again, a third time. I'm so angry." And it was just such a bad place mentally because I knew that I had to get it together for my kids. And I shouldn't say it because there's so many other people that suffer with so much more, and I'm not trying to be. I'm very grateful for everything in my life. And there's so many other people, and that's what like kind of put things in perspective that are going through so much worse and have gone through so much worse. So I kept trying to, just keep things, in perspective, but I would go through those waves of anger and just frustration and like, why is this happening? And I did get into the why me. And then our daughter lost accesses to certain services. And that was so stressful because I'm like, okay, she might not be able to go to preschool now. And how am I going to fight for her while I'm fighting for my life again and having to have surgery again? And the surgery is more risky than any other surgery I've ever done. And so we found the best of the best surgeons, Dr. Kristen Otto. If you're looking for a good head and neck surgeon at a cancer center in Florida, she's phenomenal. We went to see her. She agreed to do the surgery and went in. It was the 14th of December was my surgery. It was by far the most painful surgery I've ever been through. I was in horrible pain. It was worse than the first 2 surgeries. I was in hospital 3 or 4 days, I think, and went home, and it was a very, very long, painful recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our son was in candlelight
Mhm.
processional at
Yeah.
Epcot with his school. And he was an underclassman, and they allowed him to sing, and I missed that because the doctor was like, "There's no way you're going to Epcot 2 weeks after your
Yeah.
surgery." So I missed it, and that was really, really hard. I was so proud of him. And my mind went to really negative places both before and after the surgery, just fears about, well, could this come back? And the doctor, when we went to post-op, she was like, we got it all because
Yeah.
I took out so many lymph nodes and only that one lymph node that they biopsied was cancerous.
Yeah.
So she's like, I got it all. So I'm believing that. And my thyroid levels went down. So she says, we believe, you're pretty much in remission. There's no real remission with thyroid cancer because you're always being monitored, but it's low enough to say that you're good for now. So by the time it took 22 years for it to come
Yeah.
back, you're probably going to die of something else of old age before you have this again. So that was comforting. But yeah, it was a really, really tough time. It's been a journey. So
Again, you're one of the scratch that, you are the toughest person I know. So after the, 3rd battle with thyroid cancer, what happened after that?
um, after my surgery, I was angry at cancer, really. Decided I need to do something that felt impossible. If I've survived cancer 3 times, preeclampsia twice, I'm fighting for my kids every day. I have to be tough enough to do something crazy. And I never, ever thought of ever doing a marathon. And that's how this all kind of ties together because I was on Main Street 2024 marathon weekend cheering Coach Tom. I think it was on his first Dopey challenge and my friend Maria's first Dopey challenge. It was pouring rain in the cold, cheering with my friend Laurie. And I saw all these people running through and I was like, I'm going to run a marathon because I am going to show cancer that it can't have me again. And I just was like, it was like trying to get back at cancer and basically put it in its place and be like, look, you're not going to hurt me again. You're not going to threaten my life again. And I was like, even though I know that the marathon's not going to prevent cancer from coming back, mentally, it was the way that I was able to cope with it and fight against those thoughts, those intrusive ADHD thoughts of what if it comes back or what if I'm going to get healthy and get strong. I'm going to fight through. I'm going to challenge myself to do something really hard to prove that I am still tougher than cancer. And that's what I did. I told my two friends, Amy and Holly, that I wanted to run my first marathon. And they've done Dopey a few times. They have no reason to do a marathon because they've already done the Dopey challenge and they weren't planning on doing anything like a marathon. And when I told them I was going to train for my first marathon after overcoming cancer, they were like, we're signing up with you. Oh, gosh, talk about amazing friends I'm so blessed with. So they signed up for the marathon and we trained together every weekend and in the sun, in the heat, in the humidity in Florida. When the miles got long and we went silent and didn't talk to one another because we were just trying to survive the miles, we did it, the three of us together. It was such an amazing experience. It was tough, but like having them on my side was like amazing because they encouraged me every time I felt like I was going to give up in the training. And I stuck with the training. I signed up with Coach Twiggs under Galloway customized training program. And he did my schedule, which was amazing. So if I had to make changes, he helped and changed things around. But at the same time, while I was training for the marathon, I got diagnosed with ADHD because I was starting to see so many patterns in my kids and different things they struggle with. I was like, I think I should get tested. And you were so supportive of it. During a podcast that I was on right before I did the marathon, Aaron and I kind of started talking a little bit like a side conversation, talking about like how many friends of ours that have ADHD. Like, it's weird. Like, there's so many friend runners that have ADHD. There's something to that. And I think in the episode, Aaron had mentioned, I think there should be a study or something to figure out what that link is. And we got to really talking about it offline. I told her, I think I want to do a running ADHD podcast because I'm discovering so much about this. And it's not for me to be an expert. It's for me to share my experience, share others' experiences, maybe get experts in, like Jacqueline last week, talking about mindset and being fragile and all of these things to help you overcome some of those obstacles with ADHD. So I had this vision and I told Aaron about it. And Aaron's like, you need to go for this. And she encouraged me. And then in March of 2025, she passed away of breast cancer. And it was devastating. To the running community, not just like me, like just becoming friends with her. And so many people lost an amazing person. And so as an homage, that's kind of what led me to start the podcast. And I roped you into being my co-host. Yeah. So I know you're like, I'm just guest co-hosting. I'm not permanent. So I know your schedule's a bit crazy and there may be some episodes coming up where it may just be me or me and a guest just chatting and stuff because he does have a very busy schedule.
But it didn't just stop at the, marathon, did it?
No, nope. I got across that finish line of the marathon and I found myself asking myself questions like, okay, what's my ceiling? What is my limit? What could I conquer next? What else could I do that would remind me and remind cancer it could never have me? So that was when I decided to sign up for the Dopey challenge. And thought I was crazy. And you're like, no, you could absolutely do that. And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm in over my head. And you're like, you can. If anybody can do it, you are capable of this. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate your encouragement. So Yeah, it sounded terrifying. It's 4 races over 4 consecutive days. If you don't know what the Dopey Challenge is, it's a 5K on Thursday, a 10K on Friday, half marathon on Saturday, and a full marathon on Sunday.
Sounds like the perfect Disney
Whew,
vacation.
48.6 miles in 4 days. My friends Amy and Holly ran miles with me when they could, but a lot of the miles I was on my own, the long miles. You were there with me some of the early morning ones, and then Holly would tag in and do a few miles with me, and then I would be by myself for a good maybe 10 miles for the longer miles in the hot sun when I would literally be falling apart. So, as you do with dopey training. So, yeah, I in the midst of the dopey training, I had started to understand something about myself. Some things that scare me most are exactly the things that show me who I am. So I came to kind of love that. Like there was like a quote about like, some of the things that scare me the most are the exact things that I need to do and show me who I am. Like a little mantra for me. I've got to do the scary thing. I've done a lot of scary things, not by my choice. Now I'm going to choose the scary things and I'm going to have some control over it. I'm going to challenge myself in an environment that I can control and see how far I can go, like Moana. So, and really do believe that everything that you've ever been waiting for and the life that you want to live is on the other side of that fear. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's this wall that separates who you are
Hmm.
and who you're always meant to be,
Yeah.
and you have to get to that person, whether it's through the wall, over the wall,
Yeah.
under the wall. But
Hmm.
I think there was a point during the training where you kinda woke up.
Oh, yeah. Training for Dopey was not pretty a lot of the times. A lot of the runs, there was long runs where I felt strong, but there were also 20, 22, 24, because I ran the whole 26.2. And I didn't get to mention that I did my marathon simulation the previous year on the 1 year anniversary
Mhm.
of me laying in that hospital bed having surgery. And if you would have compared the person that I was and say after going through all that to 1 year later crossing the finish line of a virtual marathon, I wouldn't have believed you. So I found out that my dopey simulation, the marathon was on the second anniversary of my thyroid cancer surgery, December 14th. It was such a victory kind of moment. But I will tell you, those higher miles when I really wanted to quit, my body hurt, my mind was tired, I felt impossibly far away from my goals. And somehow during so many of those runs, and I mentioned this, I think, on episode 4, a song by one of my favorite artists, Ernest Green, who goes by the name of Washed Out, would come on right when I was struggling the most in those longer miles. And somehow it just was like meant to be. It wouldn't play the entire time I was training until I got to like the 20-mile mark and up. And that song was called Waking Up. And it always seemed to find me when I was standing at the edge of my own mental wall. The song literally became my personal victory song. Like I'm sure it's a victory song for a lot of people, but like for me, it was my victory song. And it was like a very personal thing for me. Talk about songs that run us in other episodes. It became my push song, my float song, an emotional ambush song. Cause I mean, there were times where I'd had to pull over to the side of the road because I wanted to quit. And the lyrics just reminded me of who I was. And what I came to realize was not only for all the races I had done, but through all of the things I'd been through. So it didn't just represent the running, it represented cancer 3 times, it represented preeclampsia twice, it represented every battle I fought for my kids, for services that they needed. It represented more than just getting through the miles. And then I would hear Ernest sing the words, "It's almost time to soar." And something about that lyric transformed my mind. The first time I heard that lyric in the song, I was like, did he just say it's almost time to soar? Like, I needed that lyric. I needed that quote. I needed that reminder. Hey, you better get ready because it's almost time to soar. You better buck up because it's going to get hard and you're going to soar over this. And it just transformed my mind completely. And it didn't tell me that the run was going to be easy. It didn't erase the pain or make the remaining miles disappear, it helped me make peace with all the battles that I faced. And it reminded me that the pain wasn't the ending. So I was waking up to who I was and always had been. And that's an incredibly strong, driven, faith filled warrior, you know? All of that I had been through, the culmination of all the physical and emotional pain and all the fear that was rolled up into those life experiences, and now I was getting to soar above it. It was a revelation for me. So that image stayed with me through training, and as the song kept finding me on the hardest miles, it kept showing up exactly when I needed it.
And that ties in beautifully with your first tattoo.
Yes, it does.
And
Finally, we're talking about the tattoo.
and it's funny because for so many years, you're like, "I'll never get a tattoo.
Mm-mm.
Never, ever, ever."
Yeah.
What ultimately changed your mind?
Mm. Well, like I said, when I first told you I wanted a tattoo while I was training for Dopey, I was getting closer to like, okay, I think I can do Dopey. I'm hitting the simulations and I'm hitting my miles. I thought it would be a Dopey challenge tattoo, but I couldn't bring myself to get anything Dopey themed. And the realization of waking up to the reality of who I am and who I'd always been kept surfacing, and I wanted something that essentially represented that. Every time I pictured the tattoo, Ernest's words kept coming back to me. It's almost time to soar. And I pictured a feather beside the lyrics, and I wanted to put it on my right ankle and around going across my foot. And the tattoo became much bigger than one race weekend. It represented the long training runs when I thought I couldn't make it another step. It represented every visit to Memorial Sloan Cancer Center. It was every visit to Moffitt Cancer Center, anxiously awaiting the results of all the scans, blood work, battling through the surgeries, all the IEP meetings and emails and calls for therapies for the kids. And it represented even the fear I felt before starting this podcast. So every challenge that made me question whether I was strong enough, brave enough, capable enough, now I can look down at my ankle and remember that with every step I take, I'm not limited to moving the mountain in front of me because I can go over it. I could soar over it,
Absolutely.
you know?
And it's funny because it's funny that you said that you could soar over it because I think I mentioned it last week's episode,
Mhm.
but I always tell people, if my wife wanted to fly by sprouting wings out of her back,
Yeah.
she would do it.
Oh,
I mean, there's truly nothing that you can't overcome. I've seen
mhm,
you overcome so many different things. There's just this fire in your spirit that will never give up on yourself, your kids, the people you love.
mhm.
Um, you fight, you advocate for your
Yeah.
health, and you, you go to the ends of the earth for your children, and
Yeah.
you're like no one ever. You're like no one else that
No.
I've ever met,
Thank
and
you.
I'm very thankful you're my wife.
Oh, thank you. I'm thankful for you for being my husband and handling all those challenges with me and riding alongside me with it. So,
So I got to ask, do you feel that belief also gave you the courage to start Wired to Run? I mean, this podcast has been and always will be your baby. This is your brainchild.
yeah, I starting a podcast about ADHD and running scared the heck out of me, and I worried about putting myself out there. I questioned whether people would listen and whether our story as a running couple with ADHD mattered, and whether I knew enough to openly speak about something I was still learning pretty much to understand in myself. And I was asking you to take the leap with me. So,
You know, I'm just your co along for the ride.
oh, a great co host at that. But the same lesson I learned while training for Dopey applies here too. Courage doesn't always show up before your first step, that next step. That's the key thing is that you can't always be waiting till you're ready. And sometimes courage develops because you take that step while you're still scared.
I mean, you are the embodiment of that. I can't even count how many times you've just taken a step
Mm,
out in faith
yeah.
while you were still afraid and accomplished things that maybe you weren't 100% confident that you
Yeah.
would.
And that's true. Our friend Jocelyn battled thyroid cancer at a young age and unfortunately lost her battle in 2018. And losing her was devastating, but she imparted a huge lesson that I'll always sticks with me. And she reminded me to dream big, scary dreams and pray big, scary prayers because if the dream doesn't scare me enough, then the dream isn't big enough. Since I faced more challenges and more moments of doubt, like every time I would turn to it's almost time to soar. And when I look down at this waking up lyric tattoo, it's not just a reminder of what I've overcome. It's getting ready to take off because it might be a challenge that I don't want to face. It might not be an exciting good thing. It might be a challenging thing. And I need that reminder. So what an incredible gift that lyric was.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, I know that you mentioned Ernest Green, Washed Out, and what his lyrics have meant to you, not only in that song, and what it helped you through and also helps you to continue to overcome.
Mhm.
Um, I know there's several of his songs over the past 10 years that have helped you through challenging
Yeah.
times. What would you tell him if you had the chance to meet him?
Oh gosh. Oh, I would probably freeze and not know what to say, to be honest.
So it's kinda like the Beatles or Elvis to you?
Yeah, I'm a huge, huge fan of his work and definitely has helped me through some tough stuff. I think musicians make music for their fans, but they also make it for themselves. At least that's what you and I did when we wrote songs. There was something very personal about the song, but when you release them into the world, you never know how you're going to impact someone's life. A songwriter may create something without ever knowing exactly where it will travel to and who it'll reach and become to another person. And that's a very beautiful and poetic thing about songwriting. So, but to answer your question, I'm pretty sure I'll never get the chance to meet Washed Out. But like I'd mentioned in I think episode 4, if I ever had the opportunity, I would love to shake his hand and tell him, "Thank you from the bottom of my heart, Mr. Green." That his music helped me through some really challenging times. I would tell him that waking up was an incredible gift and that song changed the course of my life from the first listen and continues to remind me who I am and who I'm becoming. But personally, for me, that song arrived in the hardest miles and helped me discover the person I had been all along. So it helped me see that I wasn't only someone who had survived difficult things, I was someone who could rise above them. And that I'll always need to be ready because everything that I'm going to encounter, good or bad, I've got to soar above it.
Wow, and,
Yeah.
as we close, what message do you want to send to everyone listening right now?
Hmm. Oh, whatever you're facing now, I want you to remember that you are more than the thing that is standing in front of you. You're more than your diagnosis, more than rejection or setbacks, more than your fear. You're stronger than that wall you think is in your way, stopping you from accomplishing your goals and dreams. You may be in the mile where everything hurts and everything in you is screaming, I cannot do this. um, I've been there, so I get it. You may be looking at your mountain and wondering, how the heck am I ever going to move it? But maybe, maybe you weren't meant to only move that mountain. Maybe you were meant to soar over it. So you don't have to feel fearless before you do it. You don't need to see the entire path before taking that next step. Um, just keep moving forward. Just keep moving and letting your strength be renewed. Let everything you have survived remind you what you have inside you. Get ready because it's almost time to soar.
Yeah, it's not often that I'm speechless, but I've been speechless a lot this, this episode.
Yeah,
I'm so proud of you
thank you.
for all that you've come through and you still have that fire in you, the way that you're imparting that to our kids, I
Mhm.
mean, you truly are the strongest and toughest person, yet still the person with the biggest heart
Oh,
that I know.
thank you.
And honestly, I think that's a perfect place to leave this conversation. I really do thank you for trusting me and everyone else that's listening with so much of your story today.
Well, thanks for giving me the space to tell it.
And to our Wired to Run family, thank you for being part of these conversations and for continuing to show up with us every other week. And before you go, be sure to check out our Spotify Songs That Run Us community playlist and add the songs that have carried you, pushed you, or found you exactly when you needed them. You can also reach out to us at laceup@wiredtorun.com. Follow us on Instagram at Wired to Run Pod and find us on Facebook at Wired to Run Podcast. Come tell us what song has helped you through one of your hardest miles or one of the hardest seasons of your life. And if Wired to Run has encouraged you, made you laugh, or helped you feel a little less alone, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It really does help more runners find our community. And until next time, let's lace up, lock in, and go the distance.
As you all know, we are just here sharing our experiences as ADHD runners. Don't take anything here as medical or mental health advice. Always seek out advice from your own medical and mental health professionals.